My name is Bruno. I'm the founder and CTO of iText Group. And iText was created as a PDF library. So there's a core library that allows developers to create PDFs, to manipulate PDFs, to process PDFs. So if you have a web application or another application, and you don't want the complexity of PDF, to refer to the previous speaker, you can use iText and in a very intuitive and easy way create documents, PDF documents. Now, why did I create iText? I created iText because I wanted to go to a paperless world. I wanted to tell people, you're addicted to paper, but you should go to digital documents. And how did I want to achieve this? Well, I wanted to explain that digital documents have added value. Added value in the sense that, for instance, if you have a document of 100 pages and you need to sign manually every page, that's a lot of work. And maybe that 100 pages, you need to sign them 3 times because you need 3 copies. With digital signatures, I thought, well, in that case, you just enter a USB stick or your identity card, you give your PIN code, and a complete document is signed all at once. So that was what I hoped to achieve. I want to reduce the work and the burden of paper documents. And I thought, well, I've almost succeeded, because I released iText for the first time in the year 2000, and today you see that in a lot of countries, for instance, invoices that are digital documents are legally binding. That wasn't the case when I started iText. Then you needed a paper invoice. For instance, NARA, that's the National Archives and Record Administration in the US. NARA, they store all the important documents, for instance, laws or like Hillary Clinton's mails. That's all recorded by NARA. And in 2023, they will stop accepting paper documents. So all documents that go into the archives will have to be digital documents. So I said, well, my mission was to go to the paperless world, and I see mission accomplished, people accept digital documents. But then I travel a lot, and I see people at the airport, and instead of having a paper boarding pass, which I don't like, they use a phone, and they have a barcode, and there's no document anymore. And then I take an Uber, and I pay using an app. There's no document anymore. I don't need any invoice anymore. So I said, oh, our business, it will hurt, because I established the dematerialization of paper, so from paper to digital, but now I see another dematerialization. I see the dematerialization of the document. People don't use documents anymore. I'm 48, so people older than me, they were addicted to documents, but people younger than me, they are used to this. They are used to the fact, so people older than me, we created digital documents that were like digital paper. It was an exact copy, because people felt safe with paper, and then we had to make them feel safe with digital, so we made an exact copy. But people younger than me, they are used to the fact that when you present data, it could come in any form. If you go to a website on the desktop, it looks like this, but if you look at it on your phone, it looks differently. That's responsive design, that's responsiveness, that's what we want. So I said, well, what should I do about this? Is this threatening our business? Is this threatening the document business? And I looked at apps, and I saw, well, where is the data of these apps? The data of these apps is in databases, and they can be compromised. People can just change data. How are you going to prove that this was the invoice that you had to pay? Also, maybe because of the way the data is presented, maybe it's misleading, because the order is changed, and you don't read the important page, the important content. That happens all the time. If you make a Jira ticket on your desktop and you use the responsive Jira, it's different. You don't have the same functionality. So I thought, well, we'll always need documents. My business is saved, because the document will provide proof, will provide a record that what was agreed upon, well, this is the record of that. Now, I have to admit, there are also flaws with documents. I'm supposed to be the expert on digital signatures. So I was in the ISO committee, and I helped redact the section 12.8 of the ISO standard for PDF. That's about digital signatures. And being the expert, I saw a lot of flaws. For instance, when you add a digital signature, that's okay. You put the signature in the PDF. But when different people have to sign, you cannot change the first version. So if you change a byte of the first signed version, yeah, you invalidate the signature. So you have to append extra signatures. And this is a burden. One day we had a conference call with 12 parties, and every party had to sign an NDA, but number 5 in the row, he was on vacation, he didn't sign the document, and so number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 didn't have a chance to sign, and we had to postpone the conference call. And also a disadvantage of digital signatures in PDF is it's complex. People don't like to use this. In the European Union, there's a lot of laws that tell you exactly how to do this, but all these laws almost make it impossible to do it correctly. And you see that people don't use digital signatures. Even if they, for instance, if you have a digitally signed document and you open it in Preview on Apple, you don't even see the digital signature because Preview doesn't support it. And I said, how can I solve this? How can I solve the flaws of data that can be compromised in a database and digital signatures that are a problem in PDF? And when I read about blockchain, I said, well, blockchain could provide a solution because it's a distributed database that stores immutable records. And of course, you shouldn't, as it's distributed, everyone has the data. So you shouldn't put private data inside because, well, even if you encrypt it, people could decrypt it in a couple of years when the encryption algorithm is broken. But what if we start the digital signature, so a signed hash of a document in the blockchain along with the ID of the PDF? Now, this could solve a lot of problems because now we have proof in the blockchain in a safe way that someone read and approved the document, and everyone can sign at any time. So, for instance, in the case of the conference call, we could say, well, who signed the document? We look in the blockchain, we see exactly who signed when. Now, once I understood this, I said, I'm going to write a couple of patents. So in December 2016, I filed a number of patents, and I said, well, wouldn't it be great if we could put the address of the blockchain in the PDF? Now, suppose that you get an invoice, and there's an address of the blockchain in that invoice. Now, your viewer could tell you, hey, this invoice, well, you get a lot of invoices, and you don't know if it's genuine or not. Now, let's see. I have an address of a blockchain. If you trust this address, and the viewer could approve some of these blockchains, if you trust this address, I'm going to check this document for you. And so the viewer sends a hash of your document along with the ID to a service, and the service says, no, this blockchain has no track of this ID. Then you know I have a ghost invoice. Don't pay it. Or the service says, yes, I have this ID, but the hash you sent me doesn't correspond. So someone made this invoice, but it has changed along the way. So it's a forged invoice. Don't pay it. Or the service says, well, I have the ID of the document, I have the fingerprint, the hash, and it matches. And by the way, this hash was signed by ITEX Group, so this is genuine, you can pay the invoice. Now, this is a very simple way that puts the burden of proving the authenticity, the integrity of the invoice. It moves it to a central place instead of to the customer, to the end user. So the problem with the end user is he needs, with digital signatures, he needs processing power at the client side. But yeah, I'm going to pass through my slides. That's all the things that I already explained. So I'm going to move this to a service. And one thing that you could do is, along with the ID and the signed hash, you could add metadata in the blockchain. Not that much, so remember, all data in the blockchain might be public at some point, but you could have a document that at some point is, oh, and there's some things missing. But you could have a document that at some point is a quote request. And this isn't, okay, no, it works. I see that so a document can be at some point a quote request. And the ID of the document is, for instance, 1234, 1234. and it's signed by Alice, and she sends it to the, yeah, that doesn't work. She sends it to Bob, and Bob can check if the quote request is genuine, and Bob sends her a quote. Now you see there's a peculiar thing about IDs in PDF. A PDF ID always consists of two parts, and when the ID is created from scratch, so the PDF didn't exist before, and you create a new PDF, both parts of the ID are identical. Then when the document is processed, when some changes happen, the first ID remains permanent, and the second ID changes. So this makes that if you have a set of PDFs, and the first ID is identical, you know these PDFs are related. So in this case, we had a block in the blockchain with this ID, a signed hash, and the status is quote request. Bob processes this quote request and turns it into a quote. Alice accepts the quote request, so this becomes a PO, and the PO forks into a delivery node, so shipment. Alice accepts the shipment, and then eventually Alice pays the invoice. Come on. Well, okay. Alice pays the invoice. So what you could have is, you could have your CRM, and your CRM has a small blockchain client. And every time an invoice goes out, you register your invoice in the blockchain. So my invoice is, for instance, has an ID 1234 5A6E. And so your customer has this invoice, goes to the bank processes the invoice, and also registers the paid invoice in the blockchain. So suddenly, a document that is registered in the blockchain as an unpaid invoice changes into a paid invoice. So your CRM is a blockchain client, receives blocks, sees a lot of IDs of PDFs that aren't relevant to the CRM, and suddenly there's a block with an ID that the CRM says, hey, I know this ID. This was once an unpaid invoice, but now I see that my bank or PayPal has processed this, and the hash of my invoice was signed by PayPal, so my CRM automatically knows, hey, I see that this invoice is paid. So this is a way to kind of introduce automation. Now, things to consider. Encryption algorithms change. So all encrypted content is eventually public. Don't store private data in the blockchain. Store metadata like the status of a document. People don't know what's inside. They don't know what you purchased or sold. They don't know the amount of the deal, but they can see the status. Hashing algorithms age. For instance, suppose that I would write my last will and testament, and I sign it digitally today. Now I hope to live many years. So, for instance, in 30 years, I come to decease, and my signature that I made today is no longer valid because the hashing algorithm has been compromised. So one thing that you could do to solve this is go to a service provider and say, I want to put my last will and testament in your digital vault, and I'll pay you a little subscription fee so that you register the document on a regular basis using the latest hashing and encryption algorithms. And then, of course, in this digital vault, you could involve smart contracts to unlock this document. For instance, if I log in as Bruno Loagi, as myself, the smart contract says, yeah, it's his last will and testament. He has access to it. No one else, except, for instance, if there's a smart contract that says you have to meet these two conditions. One, there needs to be a death certificate, and two, there needs to be a notary. And the smart contract could then unlock the document. Now, what's the market? A little bit too far. There's a report from Moody's that says they have looked at a lot of business cases, and they've organized them in financial institutions, corporate governments, and cross-industry, and they saw all these different industries. So at iText, suddenly we had a threat, like the document business could die, and we looked at how can we solve this. We came up with a number of patents, and we saw a lot of opportunities and a huge market. So this is something that is ongoing. If you want to know more, please visit us at our booth. And thank you for your attention, and sorry for the mix-up.